Today, by the way, I did a show with Sergeant Major Eric Mertz on WDAY. And I'm looking it up to see. So WDAY has a show with Sergeant Mertz. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's called Everyday Heroes or something like that. Sergeant Mertz. And I wanted you guys to have a chance to listen to it, so I did record it on my end. I'm not sure when it airs. I've never done Sergeant Mertz's show. I don't even know what it's called. But I think that it's going to be something that folks are going to be interested in. He heard me on the radio recently talking about how organized the riots have been and how I've been following the work of these organizers for a long time, for decades in some cases. So I was talking with a friend of mine over at KVLY, and he asked me about the organizers and my interview with Sergeant Eric Mertz today, and it occurred to me that there are some really powerful organizing principles that it would be good for you guys to know about. One of them is the power of certain demographics of people, specifically the very young and the very old, the elderly and the youth, the children and the aged. Why is it so important? Well, for one, you don't typically see young people, right? You don't typically see little kids or older people, older folks, especially those that have, disabilities or are dependent on people, organizing folks or, protesting. And so when you do see them, when you see older people involved, it has a lot of power. Think about the impact of the story recently of an older activist. I'm not sure if his name is pronounced Gugino or Gugino, but the video of him being pushed by law enforcement and how that impacted people on a very visceral level. There's really no way to speak about elderly activists or youth activists without sounding like a completely callous, horrible person, no matter who you are, no matter what party you come from or what political ideology you come from. That's the power of older activists and younger activists. So today I wanted to examine some of what that power looks like in action. Specifically, I wanted to focus on one of the activists that I have seen. One of the things I was asked was about activists that I saw that were at Standing Rock that I've seen going forward in different campaigns, such as disaster relief, as well as in the caravans in Mexico, and now in the riots that we see today. And one of those people is an older activist by the name of Lisa Fithian. This is her Facebook page. So, and I think it's really interesting and important to analyze how these activists work, right? Lisa Fithian, the way that I met her was that she was arrested at Standing Rock and ended up here in our home. We did jail support. So she ended up here in our home along with many other activists. And Lisa was one of the people that was photographing the arrest that took place on the action that those activists got arrested at on the day that she ended up in jail. She showed us video here in our home of the arrest that took place. And you could tell that the activists that were arrested in the action with her, many of them older individuals like herself, had extensive training. In other words, they were trained in how to protest and how to get arrested. And that is because Lisa Fithian is a seasoned activist and organizer. I'm going to share with you that in the last year, I believe, Lisa Fithian has gotten a book published, and her book is now being circulated and used as part of the training of activists. Here you can see that just 1 day ago, she was doing a direct action training by Lisa Fithian that was for the Northern California Resist, and they were being trained in direct action. Direct action in the time of the uprising. I guess what is happening to America right now is the uprising. And as you can see here, it says that this is direct action expert training. Expert training. Internationally recognized activist and organizer, author of Shut It Down, Stories from a Fierce, Loving Resistance, Lisa Fithian. And you will also notice, interspersed among posts about pipeline protests, that Lisa has a direct action video on YouTube. So let's take a look at this.
And that's one of the things, that's one reason why I do direct action. Because for me, direct action is the most rapid and radically transformative strategy, tactic, and way of life that I've seen. And I watch people who come into this work, do some amazing rad stuff, their eyes light up, they feel their power, and it's like there's no going back, right? So that's part, we want to be organizing in a way that we're igniting people's passion, imagination, feelings, and doing something meaningful, you know?
What is direct action?
So direct action is like a strategy where we are willing to use our power to intervene in a situation where we're not asking permission, right? We're just doing it. So it's like shutting down an assembly line in a plant is direct action. Mm-hmm. Going in and occupying somebody's office could be seen as direct action. There are many, many different types of direct action. Civil disobedience is a tactic, a direct action tactic, where you are putting yourself in a place where you may risk being arrested. With a lot of other direct action tactics, you may not be trying to get arrested. but you're trying to change the dynamics of power in that moment in order to improve your conditions, whatever they may be.
So one of the things that I learned about Lisa Fithian early on that really drew my attention was the fact that she had been involved in the organization that basically gave Brandon Darby his beginning as an activist. She worked with him in an organization that she actually wrote a blog about FBI informant Brandon Darby titled Sexism, Egos, and Lies, in which she detailed her work with Brandon Darby at Common, let's look at it. I can't remember the name of the organization, but as you can see, Brandon Darby, who was an Austin activist and an FBI informant, leading up to the 2008 Republican National Convention protest that took place in St. Paul, Minnesota. And he was a key witness against two young men from Midland, Texas, Bradley Crowder and David McKay, who, thanks to Brandon's involvement, were convicted of manufacturing Molotov cocktails. And this is written from the perspective of Lisa. She said she knew Brandon and she was aware of the investigation. She was aware into the investigation the FBI was doing of these activists, including herself. I, like many others engaged in political protests, am a suspect because of my politics, not my actions. So she and many other people that worked with this FBI informant who turned this is Scott Crow and Brandon Darby. Scott Crow was protected or supported by the Republican National Convention and the Republican Party, and Brendan Darby was given a lot of support by the FBI and other institutions as well, in especially in the organizing world. So Brandon goes back through the organizing work in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. They set up an organization to help the victims of Hurricane Katrina that was a nonprofit. Brendan, around the year 2003, inserted himself with the anti-war community and gained a reputation at that time. Brandon was supposedly arrested for photographing undercover cops, and he worked as one of the founders of this nonprofit organization, Common Ground Relief, which is the name I couldn't think of. And a part of it was working with ex-Black Panther Malik Rahim. So out of this, there's an article in which they talk here about what informs an informant, the untold story of Brandon Darby. And Fithian is quoted here. And it talks about the macho culture created by activists in different spheres, which made it possible to hold Darby accountable for his to hold Brendan Darby accountable for his actions. It may have even given him impunity. This is a quote from Fithian. Brandon could have continued to Brandon could not, have continued to do what he did if he was not backed by Malik and common grounds, said Fithian. And Brandon could not have continued to do what he did around the RNC if he wasn't backed by Scott Crow. So you have to see there's a repeating pattern where the dominant systems and the people within them are in many ways unconsciously continuing to promote this. And I think that's important, especially coming from her as an activist, as an organizer, because she recognizes how organizations are created, which ones thrive, which ones survive, and why. In fact, it's the subject of her new book that just came out called Shut It Down, Stories from a Fierce, Loving Resistance. And I think that the introduction to this book, giving a background of her history, does a really good job of telling you about Lisa Fithian. Take a listen.
Introduction. I have always been a rocker. Yes, I'm talking about rock and roll, and yes, I'm talking about rocking the boat, but really it goes back further than that. When I was a toddler, I was literally rocking on the sofa, in the car, on the rocking horse, or back and forth in a high chair. There are stories of me rocking my crib clear across the room. Born in 1961, I was raised by a generation of women who were introduced to baby formulas and Swanson TV dinners, and who were counseled not to coddle their children, but in fact to ignore them, no matter how loud they cried or ran around raising a ruckus. Even at that young age, I must have understood the anonymous quote loved by activists: "The most common way people give up their power is thinking they don't have it." I continued to raise my voice. By the second grade, a teacher noted on my report card that Lisa is an instigator. Troublemaking was something I was good at. In high school, I saw that all the tables in the cafeteria were littered with trash, and I felt so pissed off at the lack of respect that I started a student newspaper, The Free Thinker, to spread information about school issues, community accountability, and respect. My mom brought home a mimeograph machine from work so we could run the paper from our garage. Inspired by the impact of the paper, I ran for and won student council president. By the end of high school, I was voted most likely to do things for the school. I was also voted most likely to do things to the school. I am grateful that I found my life's purpose at a young age, and over the years I have seen, time and again, that organizing and nonviolent direct action work. I've had the opportunity to be part of many different movements, struggles, victories, and defeats over the past 40-plus years. I have raised up many powerful young organizers, and have trained tens of thousands of people in the dynamics of power, fear, and oppression, the art and science of strategic nonviolent direct action, and the processes and structures that support liberation by running counter to forces of oppression. I have witnessed firsthand the growth of networks of resistance that are still in place today, and I have learned why some networks are strong while others collapse. In my years as an anti-racist organizer, I have shut down the CIA, disrupted the World Trade Organization's first major meeting during the Battle of Seattle, and helped launch Common Ground Relief, a grassroots organization that supported communities in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. I have camped in a ditch with Cindy Sheehan, the Gold Star mom who protested the Iraq War. I have stood my ground in Tahrir Square and set sail on the U.S. and women's boats to Gaza. I have occupied Wall Street, taken action for climate justice, marched on the streets of Ferguson, and walked in solidarity with tribal leaders at Standing Rock. During the anxious months after the 2016 election, I protested Trump's inauguration, marched in Washington, and organized anti-racist trainings in my adopted hometown of Austin, Texas, in response to the white supremacists who have violently exposed themselves in our community. Today, more than ever, we are reminded of the enduring relevance of the words of Spanish-American philosopher George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I have not forgotten my own past experiences in the ongoing struggle for human freedom and dignity. Indeed, after being arrested well over 100 times for my acts of civil disobedience, my experiences are seared rather than indelibly in my mind in the form of painful sensory memories.
This says, I'm just going through, as you can see, I'm just going through the introduction and the photos. This is got Jody Evans for Code Pink tagged here. You can see that Code Pink is on her shirt. And I think this is Jody Evans of Code Pink. I want you to see the different connections. This woman here, as you can see, is tagged as Jane Fonda. This is from March 31st. That's obviously not Jane Fonda, but there's a reason why these two women were tagged in the picture. You can see Jody Evans of Code Pink and Jane Fonda are tagged in the photo. And you can see that the tag of Jane Fonda was posted by Doug McLean. Doug McLean is one of the creators of the platform Indigenous Life Movement. Doug McLean was one of the activists in the Caravan Support Network that was helping the smuggling operation that we talked about here at our station for many months. Lisa Fithian was part of the activists. There she is. That we saw working with the Border Support Network, especially those that were at the Tornillo facility in Texas and the encampments that we saw in Texas. There are certain groups that were created, including We Will Not Be Silent and Remove Trump, that are tagged throughout these pictures a number of different times. And certain activists that I see again and again working with Lisa Fithian. And I'll point some of them out as I come upon them again. I think this is the guy that was the former Black Panther, Malik. They also intersect, these groups intersect with groups that are queer and trans leadership groups. So many of these individuals are fighting for equality for queer and transgender issues, as well as climate justice, as well as indigenous rights, as well as open borders and immigrant rights, as well as, you know, so there's a lot of overlap. This woman here is one of the people that appears time and again in actions and in photos with Lisa. And this is when she came out with her book, which wasn't that long ago. Again, this woman here, as you can see, she is in a lot of these actions with Lisa. They seem to end up at the same places together. Here she is again. Notice she's very short hair. She is a queer activist. There she is again. Her name is Lori Arbiter. And they, now this is back in January, so you can see, just if you go back a certain number of months, here we are. This is Lori Arbiter. That's how you pronounce that name. Going back to January. and they're at the House of Representatives asking for Trump's impeachment, asking for Trump's removal. There they are, the same two women, Lisa Fithian, Lori Arbiter. So I know a lot about Lisa Fithian and her connections to Hollywood, to gay activism, to certain political campaigns, and certain people, certain issues, including the caravan and immigration. See, you see them again and again and again, the same people. Lori, her, Lori, her, Lori. So I just wanted to point that out to you. It's not just a coincidence that these folks end up fighting and getting arrested again and again. This is in Ferguson in 2019. Love Has No Borders. This is in Michigan. And these are people that are constantly traveling from one place to another. Traveling from one place to another place to another place. Lisa Fithian, by the way, when she came to Standing Rock, for those of you who were at Standing Rock and know what happened at Standing Rock, this is, hey Anthony, what's up? I'm giving some education on organizing here. They came when the clergy came. And the reason that this is significant is that there is a moral, see, that's him, Malik Rahim. This is ex-Black Panther. And this is her when they were still with Common Grounds, the organization that started in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. So notice that disasters like Hurricane Katrina, like the disaster relief, those are all opportunities for individuals to come in and save the day, if you will. These organizers, the nonprofits they work with, the Hollywood connections. There's Jane Fonda, the real Jane Fonda. There's Lisa Fithian. They came with clergy because they wanted to establish that they have a moral high ground from which they are organizing and fighting. This moral high ground gives them the authority to do the things that happen at places like Standing Rock, where you have mass arrest. These organizers, because many of them are elderly, okay? They know that the effect of them getting arrested, the effect of somebody as old as Jane Fonda, the effect of Lisa Fithian is right behind her. Notice Jane Fonda is right here, and here's Lisa Fithian. That is going to have a profound effect. And Lisa Fithian is an expert at getting arrested. Now, let me share with you just for a moment some of the resources that they use. We'll get to Lori Arbiter's page in just a second. But first, take a look at one of their resources. This is a street medic and protester safety guide. This tells you everything you need to know about going out and being effective at demonstrating where police agents of the corporate state might be trying to scare you away, hurt, or arrest you. Your best move is to believe in your vision for a better world and learn, prepare, and work together. Dress appropriately and pay attention at the demonstration. Stay flexible, creative, and be proactive. If you want to learn how to protest effectively, you need to know all of the right tactics. Notice that this page is flanked by pictures of one of the tactics used by expert level demonstrators. This is called de-arresting. And de-arresting is exactly what it sounds like. It is taking a person that has been arrested and de-arresting them. That means an activist or a group of activists need to pile in on law enforcement and take an activist that's been arrested away from the police. Now that's very dangerous to do. You'll notice that this is available in French and in English, and that the guides include all sorts of things like a quick guide for demonstrators, demonstrators for dummies, if you will, introduction for protesters and medics. Spoiler alert, you don't have to be a medic or have any medical training to call yourself a medic or to put a red taped square on your shirt and run around saying you're a medic. Dress for success, gear to bring to a protest. Gas mask, goggles and bandanas, improvised shields, helmets and masks. You need to know, scouts, reconnaissance, information, scouts, reconnaissance and information. If you're listening and you have been in the military, you know that these words, they pertain to military operations, not peaceful demonstrations. Scouts, reconnaissance, information gathering, that's part of a military operation. That's not just peaceful protesting. Tear gas, pepper spray, information and treatment. Water flush for pepper spray and tear gas. How tear gas and pepper spray are used. Treating breathing problems from chemicals. Cuts and wounds. Police tactics. Advanced protester training. How to talk to riot police and rioters, because, by the way, you're supposed to talk to the riot police and the rioters. Do you notice how they stand in front of the police, inches from their face, many times, to quote-unquote talk to them? These are tactics that are used that many times instigate clashes or arrests between the police and the protesters. Now, all of these things are meant to elicit emotions from those of you who are watching. Projectiles, plastic, rubber, bullets, sound grenades, pamphlets, stay healthy so you can stay in the street. Stay healthy so you can stay in the street. Know your rights after the intense protest. Hypothermia and cold injuries. Getting arrested? Are you getting arrested? Here's what you need to know. There's also a guide for transgender, transsexual, intersex, and gender queer activists. And then, of course, there is different resources in different languages, in French and in Spanish. But take a look at the level of training that is involved. This isn't just something that is about demonstrating in the streets or protesting and redressing grievances. This is much more detailed. The advanced protester training includes role plays and brainstorming. It talks about setting up scenes where there are medics, protesters, and police. Protesters may be yelling or injured or panicked. Police may be attacking. Medics have to treat the injured in a highly charged environment. So they actually have role play scenarios that train people how they're supposed to react in these types of activities. Here are some examples. Disaster strikes your demonstration. You have a severely injured patient and not enough medics and or adequate supplies. The police are advancing. Tear gas and rocks are flying everywhere. Your cell phones are dead. What do you do? So they go through and practice those scenarios. If you're getting arrested, there's different advanced advice on getting arrested and staying healthy. Here's a PDF version of that. Sorry about it, it's sideways. What to do if you're put in plastic handcuffs. What to do if you have medical problems before or during your detention. What to do when you get out. All of this stuff is very important in terms of whether or not you can get out of jail faster once you're arrested. And these are all things that people are trained with prior to going in and protesting, so they know exactly what to say and what to do all the way through, getting arrested. So, just so you know, they're very, very organized in terms of training and the details. Now, let's go back to the Lisa Fithian page. I want to scroll down here to get to some of the other connections that she has. This is a woman that was part of the Border Support Network. She was also part of Occupy Wall Street. Now you'll recall that I told you that Occupy Wall Street, which happened before Standing Rock, which was the training ground for a lot of especially the way that they have decentralized the leadership so that they can claim there are no leaders. There is no one that is accountable or can be held accountable for what these folks do because there's no leaders. This is Bob Bland, one of the organizers and founders of the Women's March. Here they are working with Freedom for Palestine. This is Standing Rock, okay? These are the protests that happened at Standing Rock that she was part of in November of 2016. Oh my gosh. That's one of the brown berets. So these are the photographs from the events that took place at that time. Let me scroll through quickly. And I want to go over now to her friend, who she's pictured here with. Because you can see a lot of the connections and the way in which the power of older and younger organizers really has an impact on movements. So let's take a look at Lori for a second. And Lori, as you can see, she has, they have some kind of a sign, t-shirt, they're definitely in the art and image department. There's all the t-shirts. And so you'll see a lot of what they do. I believe that this is her screen printing T-shirts. Is the propaganda, the messaging part, right? The messaging behind the movements. And here she is with her signs. This is in May of this year during protests, okay? This is recent. This is during the time of these protests that you've seen and that you're seeing right now, people getting arrested at, her and her friend. Now this is still in May. You can see the kinds of signs that they were putting out. A lot of it has to do with Trump, right? Children of the world. Racism is for profit. Poverty is not natural, it is man-made. It can be overcome and eradicated by humans. That's a quote from Rosa Parks. Racism is tyranny. Police brutality is a deadly force. There she is. She's wearing a mask over her nose. This is during the pandemic, right? Defeat fascism is another t-shirt. Question authority. We will not be silent. We will not be silent is one of the groups that they have on Facebook. They even have onesies for babies. They can get in on it. Now look at this picture. Here she is next to a black child, a young black child that says, unarmed civilian, we will not forget. I mean, these are powerful images if you think about the juxtaposition. And somebody that's looking at her Facebook page agrees. Powerful picture. Yes, it is. It's very powerful to see a child protesting in the street. Old people protesting. This is a powerful image. An old black woman. State of injustice. So the imagery, these images and the way that they're photographed, and they have professional photographers doing this. Does America have a conscience? Wealth supremacy is deadly. That has a lot to do with how you feel. Here she is standing next to the girl on Wall Street with a mask on, and she also has her mask on. They're in front of the hospital, Dignity for All, Love, Solidarity, Harlem Hospital Center. Again, this is during the pandemic. This is the beginning of the pandemic. There's Lisa Fithian. Here's Lori. Women Strike Back. May Day 2020. Don't be afraid. There's Lisa Fithian and her together. Trump lies all the time. State of grief, state of emergency. You know, with the backdrop of the American flag. This is these images. The imagery has a lot to do with. Now take a look at this. Here's another very, very strong image. You have children in the background marching, right? It says TikTok, time is up. And there's a little girl wearing a Hello Kitty sweater that says courage. We teach our children not to lie. Trump lies all the time. We will not let Trump hollow out the truth anymore. Arrest Trump. Strong men must be stopped. Defeat Trump. Notice this isn't even about the GOP. This is specifically about Trump. A lot. A lot. I mean, look at the shirt that she's wearing. This is very much directed at Trump's administration, specifically. And this is that queer group that I mentioned before, that they're part of Reclaim Pride Coalition New York. I don't know if that's the building that they work out of. I'm guessing it is, perhaps, maybe. I'm going to go through these a little bit faster. They had Love Has No Borders. Remember, they are also working with the Border Support Network, Defeat Fascism. I suspect that these are queer activists. Many of them are queer activists. I know for a fact they are. We'll see that coming up. And I apologize I'm going through this so quickly. I just really want you to get a sense of how they work and why there is power behind the images of young, very young activists and older activists, wherever they may be, because the impact of one of them getting arrested, what that does to our emotions, you know, it's very powerful. So what else are they connected to? I want you to see, going back further, here they are in DC. Trump is guilty. Trump is guilty. TikTok time is up. They're very much about impeaching the president. They all wear the all black garb with the white lettering all the time. Here she is getting arrested. And here's the children again. Look at the powerful image of a child. And just be aware of the fact that I've showed you, if you watched my Sunrise Movement video, they work with children. They also work with a lot of older people. Take a look at the picture here that I'm showing you. These are all older Americans. Every single one of them are older Americans. It's very important. They have great power. These older American activists have great power, because when you see them protesting, they're going to tell you they have every right to be out there protesting, right? They're going to tell you that the children have every right to be out there protesting, because if they're old enough to experience what's happening in our country, then they're old enough to know what's going on. They're old enough to be there. Knowing full well, as you've seen, there are going to be people that get arrested. Here she is with the group of Queer Liberation. This is that activist group, one of the activist group that she's with. And this is them protesting. Here she is in the Supreme Court. There she is in Washington, D.C. She's in favor of impeachment. It says right there. She was in the impeachment hearings. I see these activists constantly traveling. How they're funded to travel literally every moment of the year, I don't know. Doesn't matter if there's a pandemic, doesn't matter what's going on, they're traveling, they're protesting. And this is this woman's page, this entire woman's page. You'll see that nothing but this, on and on and on and on. Here they are, protesting around impeachment. And here's more children. Take a look at this. The future of our planet depends on us. Climate justice. Okay, so the intersections of climate justice, the children, what was it called? The Sunrise Movement, and the way that they train middle school and high school children. Here they are protesting the Kavanaugh hearings. Okay. Same group of people, similar signs. Oh, and there's Greta Thunberg. Are you surprised to see Greta Thunberg, the poster child for getting children involved in activism, in climate justice and social justice? There she is. Makes sense, right? Here's a little baby in a little onesie. Love is power. Little black baby. even more powerful, with Stop Climate Change Now in the background. Very, very powerful. Queer activists. There they are celebrating the book. There's the book that her friend Lisa made. There's the book that her and her friend Lisa made. And I've told folks many times the most powerful thing that you're going to see is older activists and younger activists. Because if they get arrested, it is going to make whoever is arresting them, it doesn't matter what law enforcement, it doesn't matter who comments on it. Look what happened to the president when he commented on Gugino. Nobody is going to like to see children. You see children out there, you see old people out there, it's going to break your heart because we have a soft spot in our heart for the old and for the young. That's why it's so important to notice when those folks are being used in these movements and how they're being used. Now here we have their work with abolish ICE, right? Same people. Close the camps that I've been following, that I've been reporting on. The same people that were trying to close down the detention facilities, that were protesting Unite the Right rallies. Same people, okay? Same exact people. And here's the people that were protesting the detention facilities. This is the encampment that they had in Texas. Familias Unidas, no divididas. In Texas. Remember I told you they were down in Texas? That Lisa Fithian was in Texas with these folks? This is at a queer event. Queer love. When will we be free? Trans love. Right? So this is queer rights. Audre Lorde. Zoe Spears. It's almost like they just put it all in a blender and mixed it all up. You know, queer rights, indigenous rights, immigrant rights, open borders. We'll just stick it all in a blender and she'll make the t-shirts for you. And she will make the t-shirts. There she is with the t-shirts. TikTok, time's up. And these are the same people that brought you the Me Too movement. Of course. They're the ones that brought all of that to you. The same people that brought that. The TikTok time is up. Eat the rich. The fight against the defunding of law enforcement. It's going to come from the same exact people. The movement for a free Palestine, that's something they've been connected to as well. And you're going to see the intersections of that with the Women's March people, with Linda Sarsour, which I have told you, and also with the Nation of Islam, connected to the people of the Women's March. So we continue to see these things mixed together. And I just wanted to show you this profile and how they, have worked on all of these different liberation movements. It's not like they have a solid thing that they're fighting for, okay? It's not like they have a solid thing they're fighting for. This is the person that makes the t-shirts and the signs. Look. This is the person that makes the t-shirts and the signs. They're the t-shirt department. They're the marketing department, okay? And it's effective. Look how effective it is. This is marketing. Marketing that is effective for the movement. It's one piece. Oh, look, there's Patricia Akwomu. You guys remember who this is? She was part of that resistance in Texas that climbed up that building. She was the Statue of Liberty climber, endorsed by the attorney, now since convicted attorney, that represented Stormy Daniels. That's Patricia Akwomu. Patricia Akwomu also coordinated with them. Is that Greta? That's Greta, right? That's Greta Thunberg. It looks like her. This is very, very effective messaging. There's Medea Benjamin. I have featured her in many of my shows. Medea Benjamin is with Code Pink. So this group has connections to all of that. IP3 at Standing Rock was the marketing and art department at the camp. They made the T-shirts, the screen prints. They were, in charge of the message, right? And that's a very powerful position to have when you're in charge of the message, when you can control what is being said and how it's being said, and who's helping you spread that message. People that have powerful positions. Maybe those are people in politics. Maybe those are people in media, like Sally Cohen, who appears in this photo. She used to be on CNN. She is also an organizer. Maybe you're in Hollywood. Notice the number of women of color of all backgrounds and religions. Notice the children, because that's pretty important. The number of children that you see involved in this is no mistake, And I think that's what's even more important is that you're going to see the white older organizers in solidarity and militant love with people of color leaders like Ilhan Omar, who are going to be coming to the forefront. Look, there's a picture of Patricia Akwomu at the top of the building that she climbed in Texas during the camps in Texas for the migrant children. This is one of the Tornillo detention facilities where they kept migrant children that were unaccompanied, minors. She was there. There's Patricia Akwomu. There she is. Here they are fighting for the detention facilities to be closed. Never mind that many of the people that were in that group were trafficking children, creating fake marriages, defrauding our government with fake marriages, and doing a lot of other things that were criminal and damaging to migrants. Never mind that. Ultimately, they jump in and support these groups of people who are for these specific open borders, and also defunding our infrastructure projects for oil, defunding our detention facilities, defunding ICE, defunding the police. Now, to include all law enforcement. And in some places, I guess that's working. In some places, there's Lisa Fithian in Texas not too long ago. I think that's the first time that I talked about her, was when I brought up the fact that she was in Texas and that she had been at Standing Rock. There's some of the indigenous leaders there. So I hope that was educational. I wanted to make sure that you guys got a chance to see how organized these older organizers are, what they train people in, especially direct action, and what that means, because I think a lot of people think of direct action is just marching down a street holding up a sign. And as you heard Lisa explain in her own words, it could be anything from stopping a highway from running, stopping an assembly line from running. So these are things that can actually involve trespassing and other types of, criminal charges, including assault, because you're going to have to come into contact with other people, including law enforcement. So now you have an idea of the power behind the organizers that are young and old. And for those of you who remember Standing Rock, let's not forget that the entire protest camp began because a group of youth ran to DC to make demands on behalf of their tribe, and that the camp ended, closed, with one of the last people that refused to leave the camp being Regina Brave. Regina was an elderly woman, Grandma Regina, remember Grandma Regina? That had been at the Wounded Knee protest where the FBI came in. So there's no, coincidence in the fact that there were children and elderly involved at like bookends to what happened at Standing Rock. And you should be looking for that imagery in the way that these protests are carried out now. Think critically, look at things a little bit deeper, and investigate the tactics and the training that have been employed with these mercenary activists so that you know what to look for. Okay, everyone, I hope that you share this video, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Let's see if you have any questions. By the way, I'm sorry for those of you who joined our racial roundtable discussion and didn't get a chance to get your questions answered. I was afraid that they might not have a chance to do that because we had more folks than anticipated, but we did get a chance to have the sheriff on the call, so I think that was really great. Let's see if there are any questions on here. Michael Avenatti, thank you. That's right. That is correct, Melissa. Michael Avenatti endorsed Patricia Akwomu, and all of these folks were working together. This is, it's a large production. It's like a play. It's like, LARPers or something. It's like role playing with costumes, and there's going to be people from Hollywood. There's going to be entertainers. You'll continue to see a lot of what you saw at Standing Rock playing out. There'll be rappers, artists that get involved. I'm waiting for the Black Lives Matter album to come out with the music and the rap songs. There's going to be songs that are written specifically for what happened in Minneapolis, written specifically for George Floyd. If there aren't already, there probably is. But these are the kinds of things that happen at Standing Rock, and they use the same playbook. I've seen it played out over and over and over again, so be on the lookout for some of the same things. Lou asks, so are every one of these protests being hijacked by professional white protesters or anarchists? I'm thinking Standing Rock and now BLM. Lou, that's a really, really good question. I would say that anything that can be hijacked, I call a lot of these mercenary activists disaster vultures, because anytime that there is a disaster, anytime that there is any kind of crisis in our world, there are two reactions that happen right away. One is the shock and the trauma of what we just experienced, whether it was a earthquake or a hurricane or wildfire or whatever it is, okay? Whatever it is. You just saw something horrific. You just heard something, saw something horrific. If you have a conscience and you're human, most people's reaction is to say, what can I do? How can I help? And the reality is that we are, for the most part, not well organized to respond to a crisis. Because we are not well organized in that we don't have a response that is like, oh, a hurricane just happened, so FEMA will be out there and this will happen and this will happen. We know that that the things that we expect to happen, the Red Cross, FEMA, certain things that we expect to happen aren't always available or available in a quick fashion or whatever. So what happens is nonprofit organizations jump in, churches jump in, local law enforcement jumps in, whoever, whatever. At that moment, that's when opportunists can jump in. That's when con artist XYZ can say, set up a GoFraudMe and say, I'm raising money for George Floyd, or I'm raising money for the victims of the hurricane, or for whatever. And the truth is, most of us, we want to get rid of the feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, the feeling of what can I do? How can I help? We want to donate our $100 to the Red Cross or to the GoFraudMe or something and then go to bed. That's what we want to do. We want to deal with the problem. Okay, I did it. Okay, now I can go to bed. We don't want to investigate whether that GoFraudMe that we just donated to is for a reputable nonprofit organization with a track record of helping people, whether they're even registered, whether the leadership of this, that, or the other organization are on the up and up. We don't do our homework. And so the potential, to answer your question, the potential for some opportunist with not good intentions that is going to hijack the narrative. If I know right now that people are opening up their wallet for anything George Floyd related, and I can throw up a GoFundMe for George Floyd or for Minneapolis, chances are I'm going to be able to raise some money. And the likelihood that people are going to make sure that the money that I raised goes to the people I raised it for is slim to none. That's the nature of a lot of these GoFundMes and Venmos and PayPals and all of these other dark money situations. You don't know. There's no transparency. You can't find out, what did they use the money for? Where's the product? Where's the end product of what happened with this money? So there is a huge potential for people to take advantage of any crisis. And those organizations and groups that are well organized, like these organizers that have been doing it for decades and decades and decades, do they know how to get to the front of the line fastest and get the money from funders and get the support from national and international organizations for the work that they do? Yes. And they know how to do it really effectively. So that's why we have to be more vigilant. And I believe that the organizations, the groups, the people that live in Minneapolis, the people that live in Minnesota, that live in this area that have had to deal with the historical and systemic racism against Native Americans, against African Americans, against Latino Americans, we know firsthand where the problems are, whether they're in our law enforcement, in our city administrators, in our faith leadership, we know where the problems are. We know where the problems have been historically. And we know what we need to do. We know what we need to address in order to make those problems less, to make those situations better. But unfortunately, there will always be carpetbaggers that will parachute into a crisis, take it over, and in many cases, cause more damage than good, and use this crisis for their own agenda rather than to help the family of George Floyd, the people of Minneapolis. Black lives, police brutality. Those are all issues that we still need to solve. And I think that we would do a lot better job without radicals, whatever part of the political paradigm they come from, taking over that discussion. Okay, folks, I'm going to call it. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for sharing this video. And thank you for supporting independent journalism. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, and God bless.